How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, this is going to be a good, high-level discussion. I would truly believe that this discussion has value both for frontline as well as our executive staff or our management staff. And we're going to be talking about the collective responsibility of staff in facility operations. Now, granted, guys, for this discussion, when we talk about operations, we're talking about three specific functions in general. And then during our discussion, me and Russ could maybe provide some specific examples. But when we talk about operations, we're going to talk about three specific things: implementing strategy, seeking opportunities, and navigating a crisis. And we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go further into the show. Let me just click that. Guys, real quick, if you haven't, a couple of books on the market. Inmate Manipulation Decoded. This book is available on Amazon. This book does what it's got to do. It's a good book. It's used for training all across the country. The link to this is in the description. And guys, I got a book getting ready to come out. Another one. It's in the publishing side now, or it's being edited, whatever that is. Well, I know what editing is. That's the process it's in. Sorry about that. But it's about managing inmate behavior. And what I did was I tried to bridge a gap between the inexperienced and the experienced, and basically what that filter is when we're dealing with inmate behavior. And we cover a lot in that book, and that book will be out soon. And it's going to be a nice little simple book, but it is going to be professionally published. So I'm not going to be in control of how much the book costs or whatnot. They all handle that. But I will tell you something. I wouldn't always go by the size of a book, because I think the book about inmate behavior is going to be a little bit bigger than this one. But sometimes, guys, it's not about the size. It's about all the information that's in there. Because that book about inmate behavior that I wrote, same thing as this book, took 22 years of experience to write it. It's not a book that you just pick up and decide to write one day at the very beginning of your career. This was a book that you have to look back and, at your last 22 years in this profession. And I will say one more thing. Even though I wrote the book in a very short amount of time, I think it took me five days. It was because, one, I was passionate about getting the book out, so that really fueled me to keep it going. And it was crazy how much I know that I didn't know I knew until I started asking myself these right questions. And then having the support of Russ, who's on the show today, who I filtered my stuff to. And Russ would tell me, basically if it worked or if it didn't work, or, because I wanted to get a little bit of the tactical side in there. But, so it's just great to be able to lean on not just my 22 years of experience, but I think at this point, Russ started corrections somewhere between the middle of the Civil War, some 1863, I'm thinking. And, just how much corrections has changed since then. Russ is not on just yet, so I could say whatever I want. All right, so we got How to Succeed in Corrections. This book is published by Blue 360 Media. Great book, guys. Tons of advice. I mean, this is actually not just written by me, but other professionals in the field. Guys, you've got to get your hands on this book. Actually, I may do some giveaways soon, so be on the lookout, because this book will help you in your career. And I'm positive, because every time I have conversations with somebody, I find myself saying, you know what, I wrote about that quickly. You could find that in such and such. And then one more book, and again, this book is doing very well. Same company, Blue 360 Media. Link to both these books are in the description. It's Tips for New Correctional Officers and Their Supervisors. Guys, if you're new, if you're in this profession and you're new, a couple years in, get all three of these books. Trust and believe me. When I sit down and I communicate with some of the new individuals, and they feel at some point they're not really getting some of the lessons that they think they should be getting from those senior officers out there, because it does happen. These books fill in those gaps. If there's not a good senior officer next to you, we got them right here in these books. Trust me. That's the reason why we write these books, to fill those gaps. So please, it's worth picking up. It's worth reading through, because these books will answer the questions. They're built. They're written for that reason, including the next book we have coming out. Okay, hold on. I want to get Russ in. What's up, Russ?
Hey there, Anthony. How's it going?
Good, Russ. You mind ignoring the joke I said and introducing yourself?
No, of course not. It's all friendly here, and we may talk about that subject a little later on here. But anyway, my name is Russ Hamilton, and I started my correctional career back in the 80s at San Quentin. And anyway, after an entire career In CDCR, I ended up retiring, and then I came back for a little stint as an officer. And then after that, I retired again. And then I started back at a juvenile facility. It was the very first one ever in my home county. And so I helped them. They needed someone to, get in there and kind of show people around what, security and safety and things like that were like, because they had never, actually run a juvenile facility before. And then I took a few years off, but then I came back working for a private company where I do case management work for a local. It's a private company, but we work for a county probation department and a county jail.
And Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos doing?
So Keepers of Chaos on Facebook is where I have 6,000 great professional members, just guys and gals that really are truly interested in becoming, a better correctional officers, better correctional deputies, better correctional staff, through training, through history, through the content that we put on there, from Tier Talk and some other sources. And, it's just going great. They are just simply the most helpful forum that you can imagine. People go in there and ask questions and get answers, and generally don't get bombed on or belittled or degraded or any of that stuff that sometimes goes on in some of those other forums.
And Russ, before we go into today's dialogue, we almost did a shift today, but it's going to require us to do a little research. Russ mentioned a great idea for a show because it hits home. So, Russ, I would like you to mention the upcoming show, but if you can go into a little reason why you think this show is so important, because what happened to you recently, or what happened to someone else recently? Sorry. Okay,
so one of the things that I do is I run my own forum, which is Keepers of Chaos. I am also an admin and a moderator in a few others. And in a few others, I'm just, a cheerleader from the sideline. One of the things that I believe my calling in life to do is to help people who are entering this profession or are in this profession, and in a way that they don't have to go through maybe some of the rough and tumble things that I had to go through, and just kind of, take some of that burden off them, give them some pointers, give them some support. So having said that, Anthony and I, both in forums like that and some other places, have been severely attacked at times. But we're big boys. We've been in the system a while, and we understand what's going on. But there's no cause for that to happen. In a lot of these forums and stuff, I'll step forward and I'll take the reins and say, hey, that's not called for. In other cases, and in those cases and stuff, I will take action if I am an admin or a moderator to pare those people back. We don't want to eat our own people. We don't want to be in a position where, we're just saying, hey, that's too bad, or this type of correctional officer. In this case, it was about being a juvenile correctional officer. They're not really correctional officers. Someone had actually asked that question. They said, hey, are people that work in juvenile, are they correctional officers? Guess what, man? I have firsthand knowledge of that. But a person came in and actually said, no, they're not even officers at all. They don't do the same hard work as those people, that maybe like work on death row, working with real killers and stuff like that. And, I kind of like, well, I'm someone who has actually worked on death row from my very first day. As a matter of fact, I'm also actually someone who has worked in juvenile. And so, unfortunately, I'm not an admin or a mod there, but this person was attacking the other one for no reason whatsoever. So I came back there and I said, let me tell you something. I have experience in working death row. I have experience working as an actual senior juvenile correctional officer. That was my actual title. So yes, they actually are correctional officers. And let me tell you, I would rather work a shift on death row than a shift at a juvenile correctional facility. And so I think that says it all. But why are we attacking each other? Why are we senselessly doing this? I am all about, robust, discussion and arguments and things like that. But personal attacks and things that are demeaning and belittling, not so much. So we have a lot of examples. I'm sure that we will. I'm sure that we will come up with some examples where we're going to have to change the names to protect the guilty that we might put out there, both of us. But I think that we want to point to that and say, hey, you know what? With all the problems that we have, with regards to staffing and things like that, why are we, shunning people that come in? We don't want to do that. We want to take them under our wing. We want to prepare them for what's ahead. We want to make them serviceable, competent correctional officers who hopefully go on to become exceptional correctional officers. So, don't be involved in that, people. Actually, take a moment, think, reach out, and help people along the way. That's what I've made my mission to do. I know that not everyone has the type of time or resources that I have. I've been given this great platform here on Tier Talk. But if we all do a little bit and we go to that teamwork side, where we're all on the same page, it's going to help us in the end. And we actually have one of our 3 things coming up that we're going to discuss is going to talk about that teamwork aspect. So I think that dovetails in. I think I'm off of my soapbox now.
No, it's just needed to say, because as I said, and we'll do a show on it. I have been on the other end of that as well. I've actually, like you, been attacked. And to be honest with you, it's just very juvenile in nature. And the problem is, the only way you and you won't win the argument, but the only way you engage yourself is you wind up being juvenile yourself, because you have to wind up going to their level to even get their attention. And it's like, you know what? Don't need it. The only time I do find myself going back and forth or asking for support is if something questions my integrity. So I don't mind. They want to attack me, whatever it is. But if you question my integrity, I think at one point someone did not believe I ever worked in corrections. I think that was one not too long ago. And yet here I am. I got pictures of myself in uniform, in my history, or stuff that I do at the other job that's shared on their social media pages in regards to helping the department recognize our staff. I felt the need to defend that only because if there are new people that decide to see what I'm about, that could literally damn everything that I'm doing in their eyes. Because I truly believe that if you don't walk the walk, having a venue like this would be superficial. I really, even if you had good advice, it would be hard for me to take that good advice if I don't think that you can relate to that advice. And it's funny, most of the time, the reason why I was
going to say, hey, who had your back on that one?
No, you did.
Yes.
You did. And then it was funny because recently something happened and someone had asked, I posted something and someone had asked, was that all true? Like whatever I posted, whatever it was a good initiative. And someone wrote down in the comments, of course it's true. Mr. Gangi is the superintendent of all the prisons in New Jersey. Nope, delete that. That's not, but it's great to know that you have that type of aggressive love, because that came from someone I'm a very big fan of. Hillary Randall?
No, I don't think.
She is aces, man. She's good people. You'll like her, man. Very, very professional, at least from, what I see. She's been quoted in my books a few times. Good hardcore officer, doesn't fuck around. I'm a big fan of her. If she's watching this show, which I think she does. I didn't mean to delete the comment, but man, did I love the aggressive love. All right, so this is a good topic. Again, it's more of generalized categories. We can't cover everything that will fit into it, but we can go ahead and give you some ideas in which maybe you could draw for some commonalities. I want to mention something. The key words for today, and we're going to try to make sure that we put this into our discussion, is going to be agile, and the other one is going to be collective bandwidth. So what do we mean by both? Okay, I'll do one. And then Russ could explain the other. Hold on, I got to fix that because I think I messed the spelling up of bandwidth. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give Russ the harder one. So I'll just do agile. So when we do this dialogue, I want you to make sure you have these two words in the back of your mind as we discuss things. So when you deal with, especially in today, when you deal with these three concerns, implementing strategies, seeking opportunities, or navigating crises, these are usually the big functions of every organization. This definitely does apply to corrections. When we're looking for agility, we're looking for people that know how to move in a moment's notice. And in corrections, 100%, that's needed, both on a very small level, but also as you start moving higher up and you start shifting the agency. So this isn't just shifting something on the front line, but also the moves that tend to shift the agency into another direction. Agility is a must. So again, when we have these dialogue, the key thing about agility is we need to make sure that our people know how to adapt and adjust. And that's literally on every level, from the lowest to the highest, from the smallest concerns to the greater, higher level agency concerns. Russ, I'm going to give you collective bandwidth. Do you know what that means? I know you do.
If I don't, I'll make it up as I go.
All right, let's see.
Okay, so well taken. The part about agility, absolutely necessary. Agility, what really helps in that is if you can anticipate what others below you and above you might need, and be able to impact in a positive way what they're going to need, even though you're tending to the needs of where your level in that bandwidth is. So the collective bandwidth that we all share, just like we could see with our Wi-Fi connection, some of it is very noisy. Some of it, there's not enough resources to transmit and receive the things that we need. And then some of it, is really being fostered by some people that really know what exactly they're doing, and they're helping out with those places that have noise, those places that have limited resources. What we want to understand is that even if you're down there at the trenches, where the contact is happening, where there's conflict, where there's issues with the population and so forth. You need to be aware of how the things that you do down there are going to have that ripple effect through the bandwidth of the things that are about to proceed as you go on. So knowing those things and knowing that other people might have more limited resources than you, there might be some people within that layer of bandwidth that you need to reach out to get resources from. That's a great way. That's a great intuitive way to look at things. Don't think that you're separated or segregated from all of those things, because things that you do can negatively impact those above you and those below you. So you want to really take every chance, every opportunity that you have to try and provide something for those above you, something for those below you, and to make sure that you're not going to end up negatively impacting the process as it happens. And there's a lot of things that are going on in that bandwidth, everything from staffing to taking care of incidents, to maybe putting down problems that you're having with the inmate population. Maybe suddenly they've decided to write too many grievances. Whatever it is, understand that you have a function in somehow ameliorating all of those things, but it might be very narrow. Your part of that bandwidth might be very narrow, but still you have to make the effort, and you have to understand that we're all in this together. And so that's really where the concept of teamwork comes in. But the idea of bandwidth really lends itself to a lot of different examples that we can come up with, a way to view things, going from the abstract to the concrete.
And Russ, that was perfect. The only person that could have explained that better was Joe Biden. Now, I'm joking. So, but that's exactly what it is, guys. What Russ said is perfect. It's basically understanding what the bigger picture is and how we all work together. So the bandwidth is pretty much the knowledge of knowing how our roles impact each other, but also knowing what that bigger picture expects from us and how do we do this together? Because I think the biggest, and we'll get to it, but one of the things that we're trying to navigate is like silos up top or whatever it is that just don't communicate with each other. And unfortunately, when that happens, the big picture may look one way, but it's scrambled as hell on the bottom, and no one even knows. Let's say it's a puzzle. No one even knows what the picture is supposed to look like because no one's communicating, and they wind up having these, I don't know, a picture what everyone thinks is one thing, but then when you put it together, it's something else. And that to me has always been a concern. We don't have bridges. We have walls. And unfortunately, we don't know what the other side is doing, and therefore we don't know how our piece interacts with that other side. But let's get to that because that'll be one of the examples. So again, remember, guys, the key word is agile and collective bandwidth. So this really truly matters when it comes to dealing with the what some of the functions are, the main functions of any organization. But in this particular one, we're talking about corrections, prisons, and jails. I did get this idea through a guy named Kagel. I have one of his books called The Four Dimensions of Culture, which is a great book. I tried to get him on the show, and he basically refused to come on because I think he didn't know how his theories apply to this type of profession, but I would help with that. That's what me and Russ do. We take theories and we apply them. We figure it out. So I'm willing, if he's watching this, which I doubt, we'll apply your theories. I just want your insight on those theories. But me and Russ know how to do this. This is what we do. So either way, at this point, I'm not going to specifically say what he said in the email, but he's not going to come on, which is sad because it's a great book. But I'm now going to have to take some of this and I'm going to be honest with you guys, and this is true, Russ. A lot of these people, they borrow from other ideas, and they try to sell the generality of it all. The magic really doesn't come on these reiterated, stolen ideas that people just keep on adding a word or two to make it their own. The magic comes from what we're doing right now and what people do in the field to have the courage to apply it and truly test the innovation. Like all these books we have here, some are theories that we have. Even the management one is theories that I've combined from two different areas of study. But I want this for advice for everyone. Pick up books that even maybe outside your profession, like a business book on leadership. Read through it and try to see, how that can apply to the everyday. And that's the magic. Because at the end of the day, when you read these are good books. But when you read those other books, you'll realize that all they're doing is just elevating a theory that they never originated it with. And then when you ask them, hey, can you apply it? They don't know how. And I think that, I never knew that was a real gift until someone told me, Gangi, what you do, the gift is really in how it's applied. And also, by the way, one last thing, the gift is also how you merge theories from different areas to see how it works. Like I said, for the inmate behavior one, I took some correctional theories, motivated with how you deal. And guys, this is not a knock. But when you read the book, you'll understand how you deal with what it was. I wind up having to look for how you deal with autistic children, because autistic children use their behavior more to express their thoughts. So when you're dealing with unruly inmates who constantly possibly just acting out, what are they really communicating? So I had to go through all these things to find out something, and that's the area where I thought I could utilize. Am I right or wrong? I don't know, but it made sense to me, and I would have used that in my 22 years career. So I would just hope that you rely on my experience, let you know I do believe it's a successful tool. Okay, and guys, that's why I know I'm not comparing one to the other. I just think the practice that's being done when people utilize their behavior to communicate, and how do you react to that as someone who may be in a position of authority over them, applied very well from that area of study to the area that we're doing. So I'm not relating the two, but the study, I think, translated very well. Right, Russ, when you read that part, it was a good connection.
Oh yeah, and that's great. Every time we do that, and we go from the abstract, the amorphous, the nebulous, whatever you want to call it, to the concrete, to the solid, to the foundational. That makes people able to actually take what they kind of know a little bit, and then be able to actually apply it, because then it becomes something that you can actually work with, because it's now taken on actual physical form in their mind.
I like what you just said, man. The concrete, that's where it starts to take form. The solid, now you could see it. And the foundational, now it's a part of you. Wow. That sounds like an upcoming book you're going to write in the next few years.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
All right.
Russ, you got to get that book because, Will, by the way, our boy Will's got a book signing coming up, which great job,
Where
Will.
at? Not that I'm going to go there, but where is it?
Hold on, guys. If you're going to be in the region, that's fair. Hold on. That's a good question, Russ. Hold on. Let me see if we could promote this gentleman. At the AJA Jail Conference, he'll be at booth 313 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida from May 18th to May 22nd of 2024. This is a picture of William Young from Just Corrections, and he's going to do a book signing. So hopefully, because he's got some good books on mental health, hopefully it does do what it's supposed to do. And then I think me and Russ very shortly will be doing some book signings as we go ahead and speak at our conferences. I will even do everyone a favor. I'll do everyone a favor. I will give Russ a bunch of my inmate manipulation decoded books, and he could just sign them. Because he's got a quote in all my books, so he's got to find the page and he can call it his own. All right, so let's do this. So basically, guys, we're going to focus on today on those three concerns: the collective responsibility of staff in regard to these levels of facility operations, and we're talking about, again, negotiating, navigating through a crisis, seeking opportunities, implementing strategy. So let's go with this first, Russ. Now, when we talk about strategy, Russ, we're talking about higher level organizational strategy, how we bringing everything together and how are we translating that down to everyone on the floor so the whole house moves at once. So how do we use agility and collective bandwidth to start implementing strategies that do help the house, collectively move forward?
So, ideally, there does have to be, a chain of command, that chain of command, whether it's at the facility level or, whether it's at the department level, has to be efficient. So when we're talking about efficiencies like that, there's a number of things that we don't want to go into that mix, which are people further down being resistive, which are people further down who aren't actually, capable of implementing those things. Or we also don't want, from the top level people, withholding resources or just doing things in a blind manner without some reciprocal communication. If we want the body of what we're doing to be efficient, to move forward, and to act on the things that that the administrators and managers want, it can't be done from a position of issuing edicts, developing fiats, and just overall just say, well, that's the way that I've said it's going to be done, and that's the way we're going to do it. I think that sometimes there is some blindness at the top that doesn't understand the things that happen at the practical level. So in order to bolster that type of communication, we need the bandwidth that we've talked about before, where we have that communication back and forth, where people at the top know the right questions to ask to get things done, where the people at the bottom feel appreciated and valued to the point that they can say, hey, time out. This is not going to go the way you think it is, and have that received, understood, so that adjustments can take place. Adjustments have to take place, micro adjustments, macro adjustments, all the way through the process. This is something that we rarely see in bigger operations. Now, having been around a lot of, different jails and facilities like that, that happens much better, at the lower local level, where there's not as much interference in that bandwidth back and forth, because the sides are much closer together. The jail that I work in, for instance, any of those officers, which is like the lowest rung there, has instant access to the jail commander. And that's not saying that they're breaking the chain of command or anything, but it's just the efficiency with which they operate and the way that they're able to, communicate with each other. There's very little filters in place. And so that's a good thing. So I hope that answers that, because in order to implement that strategy, that's where we have to be. And so don't be an impediment to that. Be a facilitator to that. And if everyone has that and is intentional with that, it'll make a lot of the angst and the problems and those things go away.
Well, I think that was awesome. I'm going to do what I usually do, is steal everything you said and try to make it my own. Right, well, I want to add something because, Russ, that's exactly what I see. So basically, we're talking about translation between what's strategic to what is going to be tactical. And for some reason, I honestly think, now, guys, hear me out in context here. I think middle management has a very hard job, because when you look at what wants to be done strategically, and then you look at what's actually being done, like Russ said, on the floor, when there's a disconnect, it's because everything breaks in the middle somewhere. Somewhere in the middle of this picture of what you're trying to accomplish above and what's being done on the floor, there's a disconnect, the first thing you have to do is look at the middle to see what's being translated both ways. So when Russ mentioned about a frontline officer going to that commander, that could be for clarity. That's not circumventing chain of command. That could be for clarity, and that commander may need to be open at that point to see, hey, what do we have going on here? Because at this point here, if you're trying something new, believe it or not, you are going to have to, not an effort to micromanage, but an effort to help facilitate. Like Russ said, you're probably going to have more communication with the front line, more communication with leadership, more meetings to some extent, just to set the momentum. Now, granted, I'm not saying they're micromanage efforts, because you're hopefully, when you're doing this, you're delegating authority, not task. You're giving people the authority to solve the problems, but you also having a venue where they can come back and give you the feedback you need to keep things running, what's working, what's not working. Because the funny thing is, at this point here, when there's no feedback that's constant, and you're not really feeding anything back up to the people that are implementing strategy, they don't know if it's working or not, and they're going to assume it's working. I'm being honest with you right now. They're going to assume it's working, and they're going to go ahead and, on that assumption, maybe pile more things. And then what happens here is the people on the front line are overwhelmed, and the person in the middle should have said, when it was going sideways, hey, hold on, we're not ready. We still got to fix this kink out. I think what Russ said is so key here when it comes to communicating, because if that middle management is not communicating because they're trying to sell a bridge, or they're trying to look good, or whatever it is, where they want to be that yes person without doing any conflict, and you start seeing that front line's being overwhelmed with impossibilities, the first thing I'm going to do is go to middle management and say, hey, are you translating any of these concerns up top? No, we're going to, you should, because they're thinking it's working, and it's not. And you need to tell them that, because right now you're killing them here. You're killing them here. So middle management, that's your job. You're the voice that translates the wants and the needs. So wants coming down, the needs coming up. And if there's stuff that starts to go sideways at that level, I think all effort should be to look at that person in the middle and saying, hey, what's truly going on here? Because, and you know what, Russ, another thing I want to mention here is, if that middle management is not communicating, right, you're going to wind up having animosity based on assumption from frontline to executive staff. You're going to have animosity there because there's going to be an assumption that they don't care, because the person in there's going to be an assumption that they don't care because the person in the middle is not doing their job in translating the concerns that can help them navigate through this strategy. Would you agree with that, Russ? Because there's a lot there, but would you agree?
Yeah, there's a lot there, and the thing is maybe you got to just be more cognizant of what's going on as far as the communication goes. This kind of lends itself, kind of back to the whole the bandwidth thing. When we start thinking about, hey, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I know I have. I'm on my phone. And hey, I got this dead spot in my house where, I can't reach the router. I can't reach the cellular network. What's really going on? And generally, that happens from maybe multiple different directions where the communication just breaks down in one spot. And so, with the chain of command, often that doesn't lend itself to just, a simple, end around, a simple, solution to go around the people who are the hiccup in the middle. So those people that are creating the hiccup, those people that are creating the dead spot, need to be reckoned with, both from the bottom and the top. And I hope that was a good analogy.
No, that's great. And Russ, one last thing. I love that because you got me thinking now. I think if I could just kind of, shorten this up a little bit real quick, I think when it comes to implementing strategy, what we expect is good, honest, exhaustive effort from the front line. Fair enough. Let's see if this can work. Good translator in the middle. So that's middle management, translating the concerns, the needs, the wants, whatever, both sides. And I'm going to say this for up level. I'm going to say care. Don't just implement things blindly without really caring for the people that got to do the job. And when I say care, understanding the value of their feedback. That to me is what matters. So if you can get some care from above, that care is translated through middle management to the front line. Front line is going to give you the exhaustive effort. So again, that's the implementing strategy. I think that is, like Russ said, really centered on good, solid communication. And guys, with that said, one last thing. When we're doing this in corrections, believe it or not, all departments somehow relate to each other. But I will say this, custody is usually the hub. So usually anything that has to be implemented in corrections for the most part, has to go through that level of operations, that safety and security hub for the most part. So nobody should be developing isolated plans for what's best for their department without communicating through any hubs, without communicating it to any hubs that's going to have to filter through. Because then what's going to wind up happening is, as you pass something down and it starts to get to that front line, you're going to have silos that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have people that don't know what they're doing or don't know where their part comes in. And I see when there is no communication up top, what's going to wind up happening on this lower level is the different departments are not going to know when to pick up the ball when it's their turn to do something, or when to let go of the ball. When to let go of the ball is also a concern that people don't think about. So when you don't have communication at the top, you're going to get a lot of gaps at the bottom where you're going to need somebody to pick up the ball, or you're going to need somebody to let go of the ball. And now what happens is middle management winds up having to deal with all this conflict when it's just, I'd rather just have that empowered and let these guys know their function and figure it out, which they mostly do anyway at that point, but we could ease it up if there was a good communication above. So, okay, so that is implementing strategy. Hey, Russ, I mean, you broke that down pretty well. Do you have anything like a specific story of maybe something with, I don't know, medical and custody, or something where you feel there is something from above that didn't translate well and how you were able to solve that, maybe through some good, effective communication? I was just maybe showing some application to this.
Yeah, I've seen things, happen a lot with, with different parts of the agency, and sometimes some people's ideas of, efficiency and how it's going to work, without going back to the whole safety and security thing, just like, hey, we're going to, first thing in the morning, right after breakfast, we can stack up, 15, 20, 30 inmates here in the waiting area, to go into medical. And it's like, hold on. And sometimes those people don't think about, hey, we have competing gang issues. We have space issues. We have too many people being in one place where they outnumber staff in a way that makes it dangerous. There's so many things that go into the recipe, that go into the bread. And, if they just start doing, what's easiest for them, they're going to end up making something where it's dangerous for someone else. And that's a problem because they're not in the position often to deal with exigent and dangerous circumstances, day in and day out. I once had on one of the lower level yards that I worked on, a nurse opined that, hey, nothing ever goes on over there, and I mean, she wasn't in the know. I mean, I go away in the past year, I've been assaulted on that yard 3 times. So it's just it just really goes to show that if you aren't absolutely sure that the ins and outs and have the big picture, when you're making moves, make sure that you're passing things on to people that can look at it and go, hey, or no, that's not going to happen. So, and like you say, we want to move together. It's an effort. When you're out there and the ball gets snapped, if everybody's deciding where they're going to block or not block, and there's no overall plan, then the quarterback's just going to end up getting sacked every Monday morning.
And Russ, I'm sure you remember when the prisons were at one point when the prisons were getting overfilled, right, Russ, with Confederate soldiers. How did you work with Lincoln to? Okay, so hold on. Well, it's a goofy day right now, man. It's good to see you, though, Russ.
It is.
It's one, but we got to get. Saturday's kind of like our routine. I actually was at work late, so Russ wakes up early because he's on California time, and I woke up a little early because I wanted to do the show. I didn't get home till about 3 a.m. And then Russ is on California time, so when I call him for an early show, guys, believe it or not, Russ is probably going on about 3 or 4 hours sleep himself. But guys, this is just experience talking. We're running on fumes, but it's still good shit, man. This is good shit. I'm gonna save navigating a crisis for last because there's a couple of scenarios you want to pull out on that one, Russ. But I want to do seeking opportunities. So, guys, I want to mention something here first, and maybe this could feed a little into what Russ is going to say. Seeking opportunities is tough because there's always going to be risk. And to be honest with you, there's trial and error behind that. I think there's a lot of adjustments happening, corrections right now that are creating a lot of changes. The changes are a little bit unsettling because, again, as we see now, the front line, especially our custody staff, feel that we're letting go a lot of the core principles and values of what they held on dear. And I don't always think that's the case. I think it's an assumption, but I don't think that's always the case. I said always because obviously there are some cases where we may have to do a little bit better at defending our position before we're so quick to sell out to a new initiative. But having said that, I also think there's some times where we're forced to do something, and then now we have to figure out, and we'll get to that, where we can find opportunity amongst that. And the funny thing about corrections is that even though everybody knows corrections is changing right now, and that's everywhere. Everywhere is going to change. And I think people are aware of that. Again, they're more concerned about what they have to let go of. Sometimes we may get so comfortable in our ways that we don't want to seek opportunity because we're good where we're at. And it's funny because the more complacent, and this comes with complacency, is that we wind up becoming complacent in times of success because we don't want to challenge anything, because we don't want to, get outside the box because we're so comfortable where we're at in the moment. But the problem is that's not a good thing. Technically, being truly successful can actually wind up making you actually stay complacent because you're just going to try to feed off the perks of that success without making any effort to seek opportunity. Now, with that said, and this is more of an agency level, seeking opportunity has to still be beneficial for everyone that works in the house, or it has to be balanced. Right now, there's a divide, and usually if one opportunity goes towards one way, the other side feels neglected. Instead of us looking at ourselves as being one united force, we still feel that we are two opposite sides of a coin. And with that said, sometimes people, it's like politics sort of, where sometimes people get jealous when one initiative is truly taking off when they haven't had even a crumb sent their way. So I think for this case here, if I can add something, when we're looking for opportunities, we need to find balance in how those opportunities are expressed. Like we can't just always stay focused on this one side and let them reap the wins while the other side is stuck facilitating it and then being forgotten about. And in general here, I could say maybe safety and security versus rehabilitation. Okay, we've done all this on this side, and that's great. But how are we fueling it on this side? So what are we doing here now to keep them motivated, to keep them fueling that? Because there is no this side without this side. So having said that, when you start to see the scale tip, you got to keep it balanced. You always have to keep it balanced. And so with that said, I think in my mind, when it comes to seeking opportunities, these opportunities should be well-balanced opportunities in which everybody to some extent feel, one, a part of it, but also somehow feel that they're truly affected in a good way by it. And again, I think that to me would be my perspective on seeking opportunities. Don't get stuck up in success. We got to take risk. I get it. So for people that are on the front line that want things to stay the same, that's not going to happen. But again, how do you translate the good, solid practices into what we're doing today? And this way, that could bring comfort, by the way. If you're translating good, solid practices into where we're heading in the future, you're going to get the buy-in from both sides. Because, again, they're going to know that they're involved in this more. And also balance. How do you balance the opportunities so one side doesn't feel neglected? I think everybody equates safety and security. Let me get one last thought. It just came to me. Instead of everybody seeing safety and security as a support function, they actually see it as a punitive function. And that's unfair. Because that really does minimize the impact that safety and security has on the rehabilitation side of the coin. So I think a good translation to any effort that leans towards the rehabilitative side must elevate how safety and security serves that function. And if you're old school front line, you do serve that function. Let's stop saying that, oh, that's for the social workers. No. You're a big part of how this all connects. Your interactions with the inmates keep the message that they're putting consistent, or making them go to education, making them go to those programs. That's a big part of, helping them rehabilitate. You are not just people that stand in a world that doesn't move. It moves today. So to say that you're not a part of that function, that's bullshit. You are. So with that said, how do we now showcase to the world that safety and security are not just fucking guards that sit there in a world that doesn't move? You guys are an active part of this rehabilitation measure. So all I'm saying is that when you look to showcase the stuff that's being done for the population, all these good things that are happening, how do you make sure that you also promote the need for that side of the coin, that needed balance? And I think that does relate well to seek an opportunity. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Because I know there's a lot there too.
Yeah, there's a lot there. If I could just say is like one of the problems that we tend to have in corrections is that we're victims of our own success. And if you take and you look at that as closely as possible, the kind of things that come out of it is we go in, we do a shift, and then we cookie cutter, and then we have another shift, and we try and make those look exactly alike, and then we stagnate opportunities, we stagnate innovation, we stagnate original creative thinking. And then when something bad happens, we go ahead and we go to a reset, and we decide, okay, now we're going to place everything on lockdown, and then we're going to do our interviews, and we're going to route out maybe some of the people that are fomenting discontent. And our struggle is we're trying to get back to the same cookie cutter that we had, and nothing is actually working. We're just going from a bunch of links in a chain to a broken link to a bunch of links in a chain, and that puts us in a position where we're blind to the things that are actually happening, and we're not innovating. And it's difficult to innovate because people don't want to change. They want to go with what's working, and then it becomes just a triage. And I know, back in the late 90s, me and my partner, we were in a facility, a yard that was just having, one incident after another, and we would just go on lockdown. And it was fine with everyone, and it was just a way that was dangerous for staff, because every time we came off, we knew we were going to have a major incident. And by major, I mean, pretty big, 75, 80, 100, sometimes 300, inmates involved between the warring factions. And so we decided to try and do some things that were not unique, and they weren't all that innovative, but we just decided to do them at a much more intense level on that place that we were. And we started, turning factions against each other, and started, developing some good confidential sources. We started validating a number of STG inmates. And after a while, we kind of broke the back, and the unit that we were on began successfully, day after day, week after week, having very little in the way of these major conflicts, still a lot of minor conflicts. The unit that was right next to us on the other side of this, though, we were in I think 1,100 people were in our unit. There was another 1,100 in the unit right next to us. Could not get their yard open, and so we took and we brought some of the things that we've been doing over there. It wasn't well received, but got their yard open. So I think, we just have to understand that if we don't look for the opportunities, we're never going to find them. And don't get blinded to the fact that because you're, running in triage mode, that equals success. So, and all those things are specific to the situation I was in. Don't think that they apply to the situation you're in, except in ways of looking at problems differently, so that you can find an actual solution, because nothing's ever going to be exactly line up with the things that I tell you. You're going to have to identify the types of problems that you have and go, maybe I can take something that, like I said, was not actually unique, but apply it in a different way and be able to, come away with some actual success, instead of just thinking that, hey, but you know what, we got through one shift, that's a success, because it's not actually.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, when we come to a close, after we do this one more, because we have navigating a crisis, we could quickly mention how they actually all interact with each other, because believe it or not, a lot of opportunities come from crisis. How you're forced to, so remember, being agile, especially during times that aren't troublesome, just, the successful times, being agile may become more an intentional effort, because I want to relax on being successful, like Russ said. But having said that, when you have a crisis, it forces you to be agile. So now that you're being forced into it, you could find opportunity even through a crisis. It's just forcing you into that opportunity. So having said that, what we're trying to say here is opportunity is there, even when you're implementing strategy, the trial and error. You could have a strategy going down this way, and you could realize that there's a concern with it that could actually mean that this strategy may not work, but it opened up the chance for it to be successful in another way. That's what the trial and error is. So having said that, there's so many ways that these things could interact. But let's get to the last one. Russ mentioned a good point in this, so I'm going to have Russ start with this first. But Russ, you mentioned, navigating a crisis. We're talking about higher level crises, but also maybe even something that could be more smaller in scale, but could have the power or have the potential to become great. So again, that, by the way, takes a good experienced eye, where I think I think this may be one of my talents, believe it or not. I maybe it's the OCD of me, or the Pandora's box effect I have in my head all the time, but I could see something small, and then for some reason, I could see the potential of certain things just being a crisis later on. Also, it could start off very small, but if you don't address it, it snowballs. And then obviously there's the stuff that's already there, or unfortunately we didn't address when we should have addressed. But Russ, let's discuss, this is the last function that we have, is navigating a crisis, another function that all agencies are going to have to deal with.
So, navigating a crisis, when I say it, when I see that term, when I hear that term, it just makes me think of, going back to the whole, bandwidth again. A crisis is something that usually, or often at least, let's say often, touches, every layer of that bandwidth, all of the frequencies, all of the operating hierarchy. And, there's the chance for that to go horribly wrong or horribly right. Depending on the level of communication, the level of innovation that we're trying to strive to deal with it, the things that we're trying to bring into play. One of the ones that comes most to mind most recently that was impacting at the highest levels across the nation, of course, was what happened with the COVID thing. I can't imagine anything but perhaps that type of situation being able to impact everything so broadly in a way. And so it was crisis mode. I think that most at least state level DOCs started operating in that realm where they activated NIMS, the National Incident Management System. Because they had to do something to start getting resources. And, bravo to the people that got that going. Down on the front lines, there were a lot of people who just, felt in ways like they were cut off from any of the power of it. But that was just the nature of the beast that corrections was riding at that time. All in all, I think that most places did quite well in handling it. There were hiccups. And problems that were, outside the control of corrections. There were things that, happened that just couldn't be helped. Were there things that could have been improved on? Sure, of course there were. But when we start, looking at that, navigating a crisis, everybody serves a function. Everyone has a frequency that they should be operating at in that bandwidth. Everyone has to understand that in order to steer the ship, especially if it's a large ship, a lot of things have to happen. There has to be, the sails have to be trimmed. The keel and steering has to be set just so. Everything has to be tied down in a manner where things are going to remain safe and secure, yet we could go in and adjust things. And so if you understand that, hey, yeah, at sometimes I may just feel like I'm, a cog, in the gear, that turns everything else, and your part is small. Don't underestimate what you're doing. The fact that you're functioning and that you're actually able to make a positive impact that doesn't negatively impact the steering, the bandwidth, whatever it is with regards to the analogies that I want to put out there, you're actually helping the process. And so, everyone should think of it that they're part of the process. They should be helping from the top down. So don't ever think that your part isn't important, because yours might actually be the linchpin that keeps everything going and actually navigates us out of the crisis, or possibly even averts the crisis. Sometimes, it has to be like, Anthony said, you see far enough ahead that a crisis is on the horizon, and so rather than be the Titanic, we get to be the ship that steers out of the way and away from the crisis, away from that iceberg. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that's useful to people.
No, it is, Russ, because I'm actually, again, I want to feed off on something there, is that when I look at a crisis, I look at the time frame. Sadly, a lot of people in higher positions aren't there long enough. So the crises that are rolling up the hill slowly, they don't become a priority. They wind up looking at the stuff that's already rolling downhill, the stuff that's already in that chaotic mode. And sometimes I may, let's say you may see something at a lower scale. It hasn't reached that point yet, but it has the potential to. And then people look at something that's happening in the moment that is truly chaotic, and all the resources will go towards here out of desperation, whatever it is, and we neglect this. So I think the timing matters. Like if this may not be a crisis now, but it can. And the funny thing is, when people try to explain why it can, a lot of people will say, well, it's not now, and they minimize the potential until it's already over the hill and now falling. Because this thing on this side, that was basically a 10 at one point. That was minimized. And now it's already downhill. And then you get someone here that sees something, feels it, tries to explain it, but it's not immediate. It's not in the moment. It's a potential. And it's funny because when you look at some of the facilities that operated down south and all the things that they were going through years ago that they're still going through now, that was a lot of insight for us to start looking at what we're doing nationally, so we don't fall back into that, instead of some of us saying that's never going to happen here, that's never going to happen here, that's never going to happen here, or worse, that's never going to happen while I'm in office. That's worse, because that means that when you get people like that, they're only concerned about what's happening during their reign, because they're looking at stuff that they can prove they're doing, instead of really looking at where the potential is, and maybe not being able to have something that showcases you're doing something effort driven, but in the long run, you stop something, from becoming great, from becoming worse. I think the biggest thing now is that people get valued, or they think they're valued by outcomes that they can produce. But sometimes you could stop something that has the potential to go into somewhere. Maybe it's not something you could see in the moment, but actually truly matters, because down the line, this would have been something bad. And the people that are mostly affected by that one are the people that are going to do the job 10 years from now. So like, if I'm thinking about, what's best for the people, I'm going to address both the concerns that need to be addressed immediately and hopefully for the right reasons, but I'm also going to address the concerns that can happen in the near future. Because even if I'm not here, I want to make sure that the people knew that I cared about them this whole time by doing stuff that matters for them in a career that they're going to have long after I'm out of office. Some of the concerns I see right now, and it's not all inclusive, but obviously in general, everyone's going through recruitment efforts, retention efforts, changes that are impacting the facility that are a little bit unbalanced. I will say, though, I want to add one more thing. What's killing us during this crisis, when we deal with crises, we can't do the blame game. We all have a role to play when it comes to navigating a crisis. There are so many things to account for, but the key word of the day, or the key two words of the day, is, well, one word, it's fine, is accountability. When we're going through a crisis, we all have to play an active role and stop blaming one party or the other. It's not about what you can do for me, but rather what can we do for each other to get through this. I don't think that is soft thinking. I think that's truthful thinking, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of attempts being made. Let's be fair. Let's start both sides. There's a lot of it. Let's start from one side then the other. There's a lot of attempts being made, let's say from higher level, to implement things that can help navigate us through certain concerns, let's say recruitment, retention, whatever it is. When they go to implement those efforts, unfortunately, you get some people that have to receive those efforts that also have a part to play, wind up just not being fully involved in that effort, and then blaming that this level's not doing enough. And it's like, no, guys, I'm giving you the ball. This is all I can do at this level. This is all we can do. So at one point, here's the ball. Help us. I mean, it's literally saying, help us. Don't blame. Take the ball and do your part in order to continue the momentum that we're trying to create. With that said, on the adverse, because I want to do frontline up as well, is the people that best come up with the solutions for anything that's crisis is usually when you're trying to handle it at the lowest of levels. So this is before it becomes that. This is more of it going uphill. That's your front line, because they're solving problems that you don't even know exist. And if you are not giving them a voice at the table, if you are deciding that that they don't have value towards any concerns that have the potential, or this concern, I'll be out of office by then, or whatever it is, so I don't really care about this concern. The problem is that concern is going to roll out eventually, maybe not in your term, whatever it is, And now the people that could have the best effort to solve it are being excluded from it. And every effort that comes from the top down won't matter because, one, we've lost their investment. We lost the fact that, because now at this point, sad to say, and it's crazy because they're going to be mostly involved by this. So when they're getting impact, it's going to be mostly them. But sometimes they get so caught up in the win-loss that even if there's an effort by management to correct the concern that could truly help them, they're still stuck in the I told you so moment. You should have listened to us, and you didn't, and now we're just going to let this world fall apart. And they may not even know they're doing it. They have gradually accepted it. So when good efforts come their way, they're just stuck in, well, you should have listened to me the first time, and they just can't get past the fact that they weren't valued when they should have been valued, guys. And I'm blaming this is going to be on management. When your people try to give you an idea that really truly affects them and you choose not to listen to them, they are never, honestly, ever going to get over that. That's something where you literally minimize the value that they have. And I'm going to tell you one last thing. If you're a leader and nobody around you says anything, you better look back at how you're leading, because trust and believe, there's always concerns, there's always problems. And if you're going around there and you can come up and say, wow, no one had nothing to say, you better go right back and start asking questions because they're not talking to you. And that's just my opinion on that, Russ. Would you have anything else to say to complement that? Because I know I touched on a few.
Yeah, that just goes, to the overall matter of things. But do know that those people that are down in the trenches and sometimes both separated or segregated from the management or from the admin, are the people that probably have the most insight and the most talent. And sometimes because of their position, they can also be the most disaffected and not want to participate. Sometimes because they don't see you doing anything, in a way to implement the things that they have come up with. And so that tends to be a gap that has to be bridged from the top down. I always appreciated it, when I had management and supervisors that would engage with me and listen to what I had to say. Made me feel like what I had to say was going to be of enough value that they could take it and run with it. I don't need all of the accolades. I don't need any of the glory from that. I just want to know that I'm able to do something that impacts the safety and security of the institution in a positive manner. And that's what I've always sought to do. I always wanted to be the impact player. I don't need, I just didn't, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I wanted to be the impact player and feel like my efforts weren't wasted by pointing out that, hey, if we ran this play, we could get a touchdown.
Yeah, that's true, Russ. I mean, I think that and guys, we're going to have a discussion on this eventually, but we're going to talk about managing the different generations. Maybe if there's time, me and Russ could revisit it later tonight, or we'll figure out how the day goes. But I really want to get a discussion going on managing the different generations, because I think that also plays out into our recruitment efforts and what we need to do to adjust to the new individuals that are coming in. And I will say this, it is going to be on us to adjust, not on them. Trust and believe they are not going to adjust. But if you see the world from their perspective, it makes sense why they are who they are. But that is the way the world's going. And at this point here, we are going to have to make the shift, whether you like it or not. And remember one thing, the people that are coming into this profession right now, they're the ones that are helping us alleviate overtime, helping us make sure we secure a pension. So we should be welcoming them in this profession. Screw, sink, or swim. These rookies that are coming in should be seen as saviors. So we want to give them a welcoming environment, a good, strong onboarding thing so they feel valued. I'm very passionate about that. And I think that's a topic that we could discuss very quickly, soon. Maybe I could work with Russ and Joe to try to get something out there because I know it's something Russ would be interested in, and so would Joe. Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I think that this has, been a constructive dialogue. Corrections is not something that just runs on its own. There has to be, a lot of attention paid to all of the, disparate parts in a way that allows us to come together. It's very, very difficult to do, especially in the type of, super heightened partisan political type of things that are happening right now in corrections. So if you really love this job, and I really did, and that's why I come in all the time, and I try and help people adjust to what it's like to work in corrections. If you really care about your job, just take that little bit of extra effort and put it out there, and try and be one of the people that makes the difference. Whether it's in a policy, something in procedure, whether it's in training someone. A little bit of that goes a long way. And if everybody, just did 1% more effort with regards to that, you would see corrections across the United States flourish in a way that it probably hasn't in a long time. So think about what your part in that is. We started this thing, talking about the bandwidth, and that little bit that you have to play in that. But just think about, if that bandwidth was, if everybody put in 1%, how much bigger that bandwidth could be, how many more resources we could have, how much more efficiently we could operate. And corrections is not for the faint of heart, but it does offer things back, but it also exacts a toll. So just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and guys, my closing thoughts is it's good to understand all levels. Because as Russ mentioned before, that collective bandwidth does relate to a bigger picture. So I know a lot of people may see a show like this and that maybe they're front line and they may say, well, how does this apply to me? It all does. You have to see that. I can't tell you, hey, watch this show and this will apply to you specifically at your facility. That's your job. Your job is to, watch the show and then find out where this stuff could apply. Because at the end of the day, the dialogues that we have, the stuff that we talk about, it elevates at all levels. So, knowing this, like with the collective bandwidth, knowing how what we just discussed relates to this picture of how it ultimately travels down to what you do every day, how you carry out your duties. Where does that duty connect to this, to that? Because at the end of the day, we are all pieces of a puzzle that interact. And if we don't understand how that interaction works, I mean, literally, guys, left, right, up, down, northeast, southeast, whatever it is, every angle, the world is moving around you. And you got to realize that all these dialogues, the stuff that we talk about is how you connect into this fluid world. And if you don't see that or make the effort to see it, your attempts are just isolated. Russ said it best, and maybe this is a great way to end it, is that you got to make sure how you move is not selfish in nature, both individually, departmentally, as a house, whatever it is. You got to make sure that you move in accordance to the bigger picture, what combines us all. And I really do think that's the best way to equate value in this house. The parallel between this side and that should all work as one. And truly, I would love to see one day in the perfect world of corrections, if one day, if there's something that affects one side of the coin, the other side of the coin goes over and defends it. And that's when we're now one coin. We're now one coin. We're still one coin if we're on both sides. See, that scenario kind of sucked. Because if you think about it, if we're on both sides of the coin, we're still the same coin. So we just got to move into the same side of the coin. Yeah, that scenario sucks. So hopefully you get the message. Yeah, but you got the message of that, right, Russ? Because we're still one coin.
Yeah, I agree. I think we would say that one side of the coin should be able to recognize the other side of the coin, so that we're not acting as if we're two different coins.
There you go. I'm trying to get one coin side to move over and let the other side in, but now the other back of the coin has nothing on it. It doesn't have any value. Yeah, yes. That whole scenario. Thank you, Russ. that you really
Anytime.
You cleaned up today's show because it was just a horrible show. You cleaned it up. All right, guys, as always, the show is Tear Up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Those get notified you every time I post a video. Stay safe.